Hi, ladies and gentlemen. So today we're going to be working on some projects. Now, not everybody's going to be working on the same project. I'm going to give you a chance to choose your project. But I thought I would start by showing you one of the techniques that is used in the wind farm, design a wind farm blade project that will be useful no matter what the project is that you need. So I've already got the blade built here. You can see that I've chosen four blades, and I've chosen a shape that is slightly curved at the end. Let me just kind of back up the construction here to show you the steps that I went through to get here. So this initially was what the blade looked like, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run back through, that was kind of in reverse, how I am going to create. If you look over here, you can see the fan blade, the wind farm blade that I'm working to create. So I took a square first, and I changed the dimensions of it so it was longer. I think I went with a dimension of about 60 by 1 millimeter. You could easily do two there. And then I needed to cut a shape out of it on the end to make it have that little curve. And so I laid the cylinder on its side. Now the cylinder was only going to cut out a tiny little curve. So I increased the size of the cylinder, and I kind of played around with it for a bit until I got the size that I wanted. And that looked pretty good to me. And then in order to cut this piece off, what I would need to do is I would need to use this shape to create another shape that I could then use to cut this out. Because if I use this shape to cut out, it's going to cut a hole in the middle of my blade. So this is what I did. I centered it, and then I put a square in here, another cube. And I made that cube go all the way to where the cylinder would cut out the blade. I had to widen the cylinder so that it would cut all the way through. And so I used the cylinder get this back to where it belongs. And so I use the cylinder now. What I'll do is I'm going to group those two shapes together. And when I group them, now you can see that I've got the opposite of the cylinder shape. And now if I'm going to actually take this and I'm going to push it in just a little bit so it's right on the edge. I'm going to turn that into a hole so that we can cut out some negative space. And then I'm going to group these two objects. Now I'm going to just use my keyboard shortcuts, but you can always use the command up there. I like to do the Control G. All right, so now I've got my blade shape. It's a little wider than I want, but you'll see in a minute how I'm going to fix that. Now, I'm going to go up here to the measuring device. I'm going to grab the ruler, and I'm going to put the ruler out here. It doesn't really matter where you put it, because you're going to be able to measure from. I'm going to put it right on the line so it's kind of lined up there. And here, you'll want to click when it says use midpoint. You'll want to click on it so that it says use endpoint. You're actually using the midpoint. When you click on it, it does whatever the word says. But I'm going to show you how we're going to use everything to line up to the midpoint of this object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my blade in, and you'll notice now that as I get closer to this midpoint, this green arrow will shrink down. You also have so I'm going to align that to the midpoint here. And you can see if I go too far that you'll get some little arrows here. So we're going to line it up just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower this down. 20 is a little high. I think I'm going to go with about 15. I can even come over here and type in 15. And then I'm going to tilt this at an angle. Now this is completely up to you, but I'm gonna go with. There's a couple of ways to tilt this. One, you can come over here and click, and then since it kind of hides the little handles that you have to grab, I'm going to just type in here 60 degrees, and I'm going to see how that works. I'm going to hit return. I'm going to kind of look at this on the side, and I think that would be a pretty good fan blade at 60 degrees. So I'm going to now lower this down to the platform. You can see that currently we're 8 millimeters off of the platform. So I'm going to hit the D key, and you'll see now that we're sitting flat on the platform. And then I'm going to need to line this up again just to make sure that we're still, I'll come around on this side, that we're still lined up. You can see that I'm lined up with, I'm not lined up with a midpoint yet because we've got a little arrow there. But as I move it, it'll show me when I'm right on the midpoint. Right there means that this blade is lined up straight down the midpoint this way. And then you can also see, I probably want to go ahead and line this up right. I'm just using the arrow keys to scroll. I'm going to line that up right with the edge of this line right here on the ruler. Okay, so now my first blade is completed. Now I need 3 more since I'm going to do 4 blades. So what I'll do is I'm going to click on that blade and I'm going to duplicate it. And I can do that by going up here and clicking copy and then paste. But I'm going to choose the duplicate so that I can change the position, and then I'll only have to duplicate it 2 more times and it'll already hold its position. So I'm going to leave this highlighted, selected. Don't deselect it. I'm going to click duplicate. Now I'm going to grab the duplicate because it's right there on top of it, but I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. If you keep the mouse inside the measuring circle, you'll be able to jump directly to 90. And I'm going to slide this down a little bit. If your mouse happens to go outside, it'll move in 1 degree increments. Keep the mouse inside, it'll jump right there. We want to go to 90. Still, do not deselect this because that'll make the next step so much easier. So we're going to move this, and now we're going to use that midpoint again. And we're watching this little arrow down here that's a little bit hard to see. You can see if I move it away, this little arrow gets further away. If I move it away this way, now you've got that little arrow. We want to make sure that that is exactly on 0 right there. And then we want to line it up. We'll come into the side and take a look. And we want to line it up right on that line right there. Okay, now that second fan blade is in place. It's still selected from the duplication. Now all I'm going to do is hit duplicate again and watch what happens. Now it puts another duplicate exactly equal to the changes I made to the last duplicate, and then I can do that 1 more time. All right? Now that I've got my 4 blades created, now we need to create a center hub so that we can put an axle hole through so that it could actually be attached to a motor. And I'm going to take that in. I'm going to grab a cylinder here, and I'm going to hold the shift key down, and I'm going to shrink that down to about 3. I'm just going to assume my cylinder My axle is going to be about 3. See, that would be 6. We'll go here, 3, and then hit enter, and then 3, and then hit enter. Um, that's going to be my axle size, and I need to go 3 over here as well. All right, now I'm going to make it a little taller, so we'll be ready for our, so we're going to make it tall enough so that it goes all the way through. And then what we'll do is we'll move this, we'll save that to the side. I'm going to now grab a cylinder and bring this out. And I'm going to change the number of sides. You see now, if you look at the cylinder, it's kind of got these flat edges, but if you take the sides up to 64, it makes it look much rounder and much smoother. Now, I don't know if I need a 20. That actually looks pretty good. So now again, what I'm doing is I'm using this ruler tool to line this. You can see in the cylinder right here, there's an X where the midpoint, remember we clicked the use midpoint when we rolled over this handle, we're using the midpoint. So here's the midpoint of the cylinder. So I'm going to roll that midpoint until it's right in that circle. You see that? Now that is perfectly lined up. If I were to back out and sort of show you the big picture here, now everything is lined up perfectly even with the midpoint. That's what that ruler device is all about. But I don't like that this is so tall. It's a little too thick. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this down, and I'm going to make it even just a little bit above. So I want to make sure that it hides the top of these blades. So I'm going to go up 1 more millimeter. Yeah, 1 more millimeter. You'll notice that for this entire build, I have been using the 1 millimeter setting down here for the grid snap. Now, if you wanted to get more precise, you could change the snap grid to 0.1, which means you could move objects in smaller increments. And so I could take now this top, I could move this down just a little bit at a time until I can barely see those, and then I'm going to cover them up. All right, now I want to grab the hole that I had over here, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this in, and we're going to put this right in the center. Now again, I'm looking for the center. I'm looking to put that right in the center, and it'll be a little bit tough to do because it's kind of hard to see those arrows because the dimensions are right over the top of them. Let me hide that message so you can see a little better. All right, so I'm going to grab this cylinder. We're going to move it around until the center point. There we go. The center is right inside that little circle down there, and it tells you that's perfectly centered. And then what I'm going to do, just check that it goes all the way through. I'm going to now group all the objects together. I'm going to highlight them all, click group, and now I have a single. Doesn't look like it went all the way through. So let's do this. Let's click ungroup. Let's grab this cylinder and let's hit the D key for down. There we go. Now it's all the way down. Now it should cut all the way through. And we'll group that. Okay. And then you can see now that I've cut that axle hole all the way through so that this fan blade, once it gets printed, could then be attached to a motor, and it could generate electricity. on a very small scale, of course, but it's certainly just the design that we're going for today. So there's my fan blade that kind of shows you some of the techniques using this ruler feature. You want to make sure that, let me just show you here, if I were to grab a shape, I'm going to grab a box. Now, if I were to use this as the um, center point, you can see here that I can move and I can put this box right there in the center of that and line it up perfectly. However, if I change this, if I click and use the end point, now it's going to take my object and it's going to line it up with the end. It doesn't have that center X anymore. It has the end points, and it lets you see how close you are to the end point. And I would highly suggest, when you're lining these shapes up, make sure that your snap grid setting is set to 1, because then your object will slide a lot better to be aligned. It'll align much easier. You'll be able to get those zeros um, much more achievable because you're moving the object more. So center, if I want to use the midpoint, I would be able to line up an object in the center. If I wanted to use the end point, now I would line the object up to the edge. And it's a great way to line up objects, to keep objects lined up when you're doing a project. So what you're going to be doing today now is you can either do this fan blade, the wind farm, wind generator blade design. You can go with 4 blades, 5 blades, 6 blades, 2 blades, 3 blades, whatever you want. But you'll need 4 blades will be 90-degree separation. 3 blades would be 120 degrees. Whatever the degrees of blades that you have, it has to equal evenly spaced out and equal 360 degrees, because that's an entire circle. So if you have questions about that, let me know. I'll see if I can create a quick tutorial on that. But there are also now several other designs, and I'm going to go and show you those now. And I'm going to let you, they each have their own techniques, but basically you'll see the same types of things. So I'm going to go to Learn, and I'm going to click on Projects. And then you'll see here, there's a lot of different projects that are available. Here's the one that I just showed you. I'm going to go back to that one in a minute. But if you click on See All Projects, you will now see a bunch of different projects. All right? And each one of these projects is going to be challenging in its own way. And it's going to be, you know, it's going to have its own building techniques that you're going to need to use. Each one of these projects comes with a set of directions. Now, I'm going to promise you, not all of these projects are equally difficult, and I don't know which ones necessarily will be the most difficult and which ones will be the easiest. But you can get in there and work and do the best job that you can to create the project that you have chosen. I'm going to let you choose whichever project you want. And we'll be doing other projects in the future, so this won't be the last project you do. Let me show you the directions that I followed in order to create the best wind farm blade or electric generator, wind generator design. So I clicked on the project. Highly recommend that you just read the directions a little bit. Some of this is just for teachers, really. But when you scroll all the way down to the bottom, then you'll see Start the Project. And Once you're into the project, now obviously this is brand new, so it won't have anything in there. You'll begin to see the directions. And there will be pictures that you can click on, and you can get a better view of kind of what it is you are looking at and that you're testing, or that you would be able to print out and use. And up here, you toggle through the directions. So you'll need to read them, and you can go ahead and see what it is you're supposed to be doing. And then it'll walk you through. And I think what I need to do is I need to go all the way back, because I chose the one. I think I chose the wrong project. How to design this one. Yeah, so I need to go here, and then I need to go building your own design blades, not testing already given design. So I want you to build your own if you choose to do this one. So yeah, so there's my blade. But what I was going to show you is the directions. Basically, we're already at 9, but I'm going to back up to number 1. So you'll walk through. It asks you to do some planning, to think about what kind of blade shape that you would want to create. I chose to create a blade like this, and it actually gives you some dimensions that can be helpful if you choose to follow those. And then you move on to the next step. This is where it talks to you about setting up the workspace and clicking on use midpoint so that you can get things lined up. And then adding shapes to the blade, so you can look through here, and it tells you how to get that blade lined up and how to get it tilted, and then how to modify the blade, and eventually cutting the pencil hole. Now, I just used a cylinder, but you could actually create a pencil hole so that a pencil could be used as the axle, which is what they're doing in this project. And then flattening the base, and so they talk here. You're going to have to do a little reading. These projects, again, are designed to challenge you. So if you come in and say, oh, this is hard, that's good. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be a challenge, causing you to read and think. So much of working in the tech world is being able to look at directions and diagrams and pictures and making sense out of it. So it's a huge, huge skill that you all need. And so we're going to practice on that today. And so you'll work your way through the directions, and then obviously you will export your blade shape. And then once you get that exported as an STL, it will walk you through how to do that. The STL file is the file that I want you to attach to the Google Classroom assignment, and I will be checking your STL files. I don't want to get into TinkerCad. It takes such a long time for TinkerCad to load when I'm loading in 31 of you. I want to be able to get in and look at your STL file. It's much, much easier for me. And not a screenshot. I want the actual STL file downloaded. And the way you would do that is you would come here to export. You would choose STL. Once you click on that, it'll put the STL file down here in the downloads folder. And then you would go directly to Google Classroom, go to attach or add in the assignment, and add that file in, and you'd be good to go. And then finally, it would talk to you about 3D printing and testing that. And I certainly would be happy to do some 3D printing for you if the file checks out. I did already print a couple of things for 2 people in the class who expressed an interest in that. So hope this is helpful. What you're going to do immediately right now is you're going to log into TinkerCad using the link. Make sure you're logged in as part of the class. And you're going to go to the tab that says Learn. And I'll just show you really quick, Learn. And then once you're in Learn, you're going to choose Projects. And you're going to look down through the projects, click See All Projects. Once you've chosen a project to do, I'd like you to write the name of that project in the chat, and then you can spend the remaining part of the period working on that project. While I'm not expecting you to finish your project today, I am expecting you to make some progress on it, say maybe get halfway through the project today. So thank you very much, and happy designing.